My name is Catherine F. Everyone has always called me Kate at 4'2". I had curated a life that looked from the outside like a masterpiece of modern success. My husband, David, was a titan enthralled of tech investment. A man whose ambition was a force of nature. Our home was a sprawling minimalist structure of glass and steel in an affluent Texas suburb, a place where the silence was as pristine and expensive as the abstract art on the walls. For years I had been the perfect corporate wife, poised and endlessly understanding. I bolstered his career, acknowledging the gravity of his obligations, playing thorough of the gracious hostess and the solitary guardian of our perfect home. But perfection is a cold and lonely companion. His work was not a priority. It washes entire existence. His life was a blur off international flight slate, night conference calls, and the incessant blue-white glow of his phone and computer screens. He was a good man, I told myself, a provider, but with every every dinner where he was physically present, but mentally logadinto, a server, 1,000 miles away. A cavernous sense of emptiness grew within Miss. I was the curator of a beautiful museum in which I was the only visitor. Our son Alex was 19. He was my world, the vibrant living heart of our sterile home. After a year at university, he had returned for the summer with a restless energy, announcing he was taking a year off to work and figure things out. David had been quietly furious, seeing it as a lack of ambition, a failure to follow the prescribed path to success. The tension between them was a low-grade hum in the background of our lives. Despite her financial stability, which could have easily sustained him, Alex had insisted on getting a job at a local organic market. He labored in the stockroom, hauling crates of produce, and, I think in his own way, he was trying to forge an identity separate from the wealth of his father. He worked hard and often returned for lunch, his presence alchemy. Disruption to my long silent days. That July, the Texas heat was a physical entity, a suffocating enveloping blunt. It permeated every fissure and opening, warping the air into a shimmering haze. It was on one suck morning that this story truly begins. David had departed before sunrise, off to close a deal in Zurich. As the deadbolt clicked shut behind him, the silent soft house pressed in on me. Its vast open-plan expanse seemed only to magnify my isolation. Was at the market and wouldn't be home until noon. The scorching sun emitted its unyielding rays, saturating limestone terrace with an oppressiviate. I sat by the window in the living room, staring out at the heat-scorched lawn. Engulfed in a fog of my own quiet sorrow. It was the kind of loneliness that feels permanent, a chronic condition of Thessal. Just after noon, I heard the familiar sound of his car in the driveway. A few moments later, the back door opened, and Alex entered. His face flushed, his thin shirt clinging to his chest. "It's unbearable out there, Mom," he remarked, his voice a welcome sound in the stillness. He deposited a small bag of groceries on the kitchen island. As I watched him, a complex amalgamation of emotions stirred within me: love, pride, and something else, something deeper and more unsettling. Thought I refused to identify. He moved tough stainless steel refrigerator, retrieved a chilled bottle of water, and settled into one of the sleek chairs. AF kitchen island. The house resumed its customary silence, interrupted only by the whisper of the air conditioning and the gentle drip of condensation from the bottle onto the quartz countertop. We sat in that comfortable quiet, him scrolling through his phone and me pretending to read a magazine, each absorbed in our own thoughts. As the oppressive heat of the afternoon intensified, eventually the stifling heat and my own restless thoughts drove me from my seat. I decided to take a cool shower to alleviate the agony of the afternoons. I walked down the long gallery-like hallway toward the master suite. I heard the sound of running water from Thega's bathroom, the one Alex used. I assumed he'd had the same idea. As I neared the bathroom, I saw that the door was ajar, a faint sliver of steamy light seeping through the gap. My intention was to walk past to give him his privacy, but me feet slowed. Some invisible force, some dark curiosity made me pause. My gazethan fell upon the scene inside, and the world tilted on its axis. Through the gap I could see him, Alex. He was oblivious to my presence, standing directly under the cascade of the rainfall showerhead, hissed back to me. Water streamed over his broad shoulders, down the lean defined muscles of his back. He was no longer the lanky boy I had tucked into bed. He was a man, and, though I was his mother, though every rational thought screamed at me to turn away, the sight before me elicited an uncontrollable racing of my heart. A tumultuous surge of conflicting emotions that overwhelmed me like an unstoppably of. I remained paralyzed, a voyeur in my own home, observing a scene I should not have witnessed. The heat that suddenly engulfed me was not from the summer sun, but from something far more profound and enigmatic rising from within. My thoughts were a chaotic tempest, and the desire to escape was nearly overwhelming. I took a clumsy step back, my heel inadvertently colliding with a metal skeegee resting against the wall. It clattered to the tiled floor with air-sounding clang that shattered the tranquility, panic cold and sharp seas. I spun around and hurried away, nearly sprinting back to the living room, my hand pressed against my mouth. I sank onto the couch, my limbs trembling, my breathing shallow and ragged. The house was silent again, but my mind was a tumult of disjointed, shameful images. The incessant echo of that clangor reverberated in my mind, instilling a dreadful certainty that he knew he must have heard it, he must know I was thereafter. A few agonizing minutes, the sound off, the shower stopped, the silence that followed was even more terrifying. I held my breath, waiting for a confrontation, for his angry voice calling out, but there was nothing. The absence of sound from the bathroom invited a fleeting fragile solace inhaled deeply, but my thoughts continually reverted to that moment-tough image of him burned into my mind. A previously concealed part of my being, a part I never knew existed, had been abruptly and terrifyingly revealed, overcome by humiliation and a strange electric guilt. I was about to retreat to my own room, when his voice suddenly disrupted the silence. "Mom, did you hear a noise?" Alex's voice, calm and nonchalant, surprised me. He was standing at the end of the hall, a towel slung low in his hips, his hair damp. He seemed completely oblivious to my internal distress. "Yes," I responded, my voice wavering more than I wanted it to. I forced a smile, a pathetic attempt to conceal my turmoil. I knocked over squeegee. "Sorry if I startled you," he just shrugged, a gesture of casual indifference that both relieved and strangely disappointed me. He proceeded to his room, shutting the door behind him. The house became quiet again, but my heart persisted, restless and wild. The oppressive heat, the persistent tracklix, and a storm of thoughts I knew I ought not to indulge in, snared Mimmoned. I put my head in my hands, trying to restore my composure. "Kate, what is happening to you?" I felt overwhelmed by a blend of terror and remorse. Despite my efforts, something within me had irrevocably shifted. I could no longer perceive my son in this way. The next day began like any other. David, who had returned late the previous night, was already at the breakfast table, absorbed in his phone, his thumb flicking through emails and market reports, completely unaware of the tempest raging within me. Arranged the plates, quietly maintaining a composite facade that felt as fragile as glass over coffee. David announced yet another work trip, this one to Shanghai, extending for a full week. The old familiar void reemerged in my chest, despite my to his demanding schedule. His absences consistently cast a pall of loneliness over the house. "Don't worry, I'll have everything managed here." I said the words automatic practiced. "I know you will," David said with a swift, distracted smile before grabbing his briefcase and heading for the door. The sound of it closing echoed throughout the home, leaving a palpable silence in its wake. Across the table, Alex absently stirred his own coffee, his eyes, his father says but deeper, more soulful, seemed Tobe, searching for something he couldn't articulate. "Mom," he began, his voice quiet, taking the week off from the market. He thought maybe we could take a trip, just the two of us, to the coast. Maybe it's been a while since we did anything together. His voice conveyed a mixture of hope and yearning that tugged at my heart, but the idea of being alone with him, away from the familiar structures for home, sent a fresh wave of panic through me. I managed a weak nostalgic smile while shaking my head. "Oh honey, thoughts sweet, but with your father gone, I have so much to take care of here at Wassa." Feeble excuse, and we both knew it. Alex's eyes, momentarily dulled with disappointment, pressed his lips together. "Super singulator," he was about to say, and simply began to clear the table. In that small gesture I saw his deep desire for a familial connection, one unimpeded by work and emotional distance. After breakfast, we found ourselves alone in the living room. A gentle breeze entered through a slightly open window, providing some small respite from building heat. Sunlight streamed through the shears, creating shifting patterns on the carpet. "Mom," Alex said, breaking the silence. His voice resonated with a depth and maturity I didn't recall hearing bear. "I feel like I have so much to tell you. I'm here to listen," I responded, offering an encouraging mathly smile that felt like a costume. He began to talk. He recounted anecdotes from the market, stories of eccentric customers and unforeseen circumstances that made him laugh. I listened, and for a while, it felt normal. It felt like we were restoring a connection we'd lost over the years, off teenage angst and parental distractions. His eyes illuminated as he recounted histories, and my heart swelled with a genuine, uncomplicated happiness. Time seemed to melt away as we talked, the gap between us diminishing with every shared lie. "You've matured so much," I commented, genuinely impressed. "Have you thought about dating, getting a girlfriend?" he chuckled, his eyes glinting with a familiar mischief. "The girls at the market are always finding excuses to talk to me," he responded with a playful swagger. The room resonated with authentic easy laughter, and for an instant it seemed as though the strange new tension between us had completely fell into reminiscing about old family picnics and whimsical childhood adventures. Elapsed and the midday sun streamed through the window, bathing their room in its warm glow. My heart felt lighter, as though the intangible void between us had been infused with comprehension and warmth. A tranquil calm enveloped us, but the ambiance was more inviting and intimate than it had ever been before. Then his expression grew serious. He gazed at me and posed the question that made my blood run cold. You see me in the shower yesterday." His voice was composed, quiet, but it reverberated in the silent room like a gunshot. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, my face flushed with heat. My tongue became parched, rendering me vociferous. Alex's gaze remained unwavering. Patientous, he awaited my reply before I could form a single word of denial. "He," continued his voice, dropping even lower, "it's okay if you did," he said softly, "because I saw you too. I saw you watching me." I feigned in ignorance at that. Neither of us believed the admission, eliciting a fresh surge of shame and anxiety within me. My mind whirled uncontrollably. He had known all along, and had remained silent until this very moment. I tried to speak, to form a dini alto, say anything, but the words were lodged in my throat. Our gazes locked, and a tense, unspoken truth permeated their room. As I was preparing to finally force out a reply, Alex interrupted the silence again, his voice now imbued with a kindness that was more disarming than any accusation. "Mom," he said, his tone gentle yet resolute, "I love you, and not just as a son, I love you as a person, as the person who has been my only real anchor in the world." His revelation astonished me, my heart inundated with a tumultuous storm of emotions, shock, fear, and a terrifying shalating thrill. Time seemed to suspend as his steadfast arm met mine. I was rendered speechless, enveloped in the gravity of his confession. Are you being serious?" I finally managed to inquire, my voice scarcely an audible whisper. Alex didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reassured across the space between us and took my hand. His touch was warm and firm. "Anthon," unexpectedly, he moved from his chair to the couch beside me in a tight embrace. In that instant, as his arms closed around me, all my carefully constructed walls, all my fears and denials, seemed to dissipate, supplanted by an ineffable dangerous bond. The events that followed shattered everything. Boundaries that hadn't been sacrosanct were transgressed, leading us into a state of beautiful, terrible overwhelmed by forces we couldn't or wouldn't control. We fell into a secret world of our own making. The house, formerly a sanctuary of silence, transferred into a tempest of forbidden emotions. David's absence, our illicit relationship, was an irresistible fire, a source of warmth in the cold emptiness of my life. But secrets of this nature are ghosts. They cannot remain concealed indefinitely. One day, weeks later, David returned home, a day sooner than anticipated. Sound of his car in the driveway, decky turning in the lock, sent a surge of cold panic through the house. Alex and I were in the kitchen, sharing acquiescent lunch that had become our ritual. The sudden shift from intimate piacito, frantic terror was dizzying. We scarcely had time to compose ourselves when David appeared in theater way, his gaze surveying the room with a tired, weary skepticism. Nothing was overtly wrong, but the atmosphere was laden with a guilt so thick it was almost visible. I knew with a sickening certainty that this could not persist. That evening, beneath the dimmuty illumination of the balcony, he found Alex staring out at the city lights. "We can't continue this way," I said, my voice quivering. "I love you, Alex. You are my son, and that is the only kind of love we can ever share." He remained mute, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon, sorrow obscuring his hands turfingly. He nodded, his shoulders drooping with the weight of our decision. Theremints, if it could be called that, concluded as discreetly as it began, but anguish persisted, a dull ache in our hearts. David never ascertained the truth net in the details, but he knew something was broken. I threw myself into prioritizing my family, endeavoring to mend relationships and restore a trust that I had single-handedly destroyed. It was a futile effort. A few months later, Alex moved out, ostensibly to an apartment closer to a new job, but we both knew he was pursuing a fresh beginning, seeking an equity brine that was impossible to find in my presence. Throughout that painful period of unraveling, I came to see how loneliness and a desperate hunger for affection can prompt us to err in the most catastrophic ways. It can make us blind to the harm we inflict on those we claim to love most, and that in its entirety is my narrative, my confession. Thank you for listening. Secrets of this nature carry a heavy weight, and the fallout is often devastating. Please share your opinions in the comments below. If you appreciated this narrative, please remember to like the video and subscribe to Cheaters Confessions. Activate the notification bell to ensure do not miss our forthcoming stories. Until next time, farewell.